How's it going, everybody? Rory Campbell and Kat Green here for another episode of Cloud Conversations. Kat, how are you today?
I'm very good. I was just saying that I'm very excited for this time of year where it gets darker and colder. In the UK right now, it's about 7 p.m. and it's pitch black outside. My favorite time of year. I love it. Everyone hates it, but I absolutely love it. So I'm very, very happy. But I have the absolute pleasure for this episode to introduce our guest, which is Russ Basiura. And Russ is a modern workplace specialist, conference speaker, blogger, trainer, and a whole load of other things that you've been involved in over your career. I probably butchered that introduction, but Russ, would you be able to give the audience and listeners a bit of an introduction to who you are?
Sure. I'm going to kind of encapsulate it real quick, though. So I am Russ Basiura. I am the founder of XL 365, which is a consulting company in the States, and the founder of teamsdayonline.com, which is a company or a community organization specialized around evangelizing Microsoft Teams for the end users. I have been involved with collaboration and productivity type technology since like 1995. And yeah, exactly. It's kind of the chills just thinking about it. It's like, ow, I just dated myself really for a long time. But I got involved with what was called Site Server, and that was really the predecessor to what was called Tahoe and became SharePoint 2001. So I was doing enterprise deployments of Site Server for companies in the pharmaceutical industry at that point. And that's what kind of pulled me into the document management, productivity, and collaboration space. And, I kind of bled my way through the first two versions of SharePoint. And, when 2007 came in, it really I was in a good spot to ride the wave that, the SharePoint wave essentially. So for the next, the next 8 years, we did nothing but SharePoint consulting for companies. And but then I started getting a little bored with it because SharePoint wasn't changing too much and wanted to kind of start evolving into something else. And when I learned more about Teams, it was kind of like, okay, this is that next evolution and the maturity of SharePoint. And, I got involved with that. So anyway, that's a kind of a longer introduction, but I've been working with, Teams and SharePoint around productivity for quite a while.
Awesome. It's a good point, because one of the things I hear a lot of folk kind of boil it down to is this concept that Teams is really just a nice user interface over SharePoint and over Exchange, and that's what it is in the background. And so I guess if you're coming from that SharePoint background, how easy did you find it to then adapt into Teams and the fact it's just that little bit different?
Yes. So I guess it depends on the area of Teams that you focus on. If you're doing a lot of the like document management and list type of, working inside of a team, that was very easy to adapt to because it's all SharePoint under the covers. But then you have that whole chat and voice and meetings component that was brand new. And for a lot of us coming into it, the whole voice was a whole new aspect, and, doing things like Skype upgrades and, that was completely foreign. So that, it added a nice challenge and something new to learn.
Nice. And how do you find the voice stuff? Because I look at it and it just terrifies me. I just run the other way. I don't know about you. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it still terrifies me a bit. So it's not my favorite part of Teams by any means. Yeah. I do like the meetings component of it, and just the collaboration and the meetings that having whiteboards and those type of things from that perspective. But doing true like PBX integrations and all still gives me the chills. I look for somebody else with that stuff, that piece of it.
Definitely. I did think the same, but my role at my current organization has pushed me into that area. So I'm dabbling more in talking about SIP trunks and SBCs and
Right.
you can turn it into a fun topic when you look at the end user features and things like that. But the back end stuff tends to be a bit tough to grasp. So in terms of Teams, you mentioned you like the meeting and the collaboration aspect. Would you say that's your favorite part of Teams then?
I would say it was my favorite part of it. Yeah, I mean, especially like with the work that I'm doing with Teams Day Online and all with it, that's basically how we run all of our events. And, we initially were using the, live event capabilities inside of Teams for the first couple Teams Day Online events that we did. And it was partially because of the scale that we needed to meet them with. But as the meetings capabilities improved and the capability to scale them has improved, we've really switched over to doing everything as a Teams meeting. And you have all the collaboration capabilities, the document sharing capabilities, so everybody within the team has everybody within the meeting has all those capabilities of sharing information and collaborating. So it's a really really robust environment for holding meetings online.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on live events, actually, because we've got webinars that have come out, which is great. And I actually hear a lot of mixed reviews when it comes to using live events. I use live events quite often for webinars, public-facing webinars. I think it works great. A lot of people I've spoken to have different opinions. So are you a kind of advocate for live events, or do you prefer to use the other features of Teams?
So I would say I'm an advocate for both. And it's a matter of picking which one's right for your event that you're doing. Especially, large internet-based events or large corporate organizations that have they'll have like a CEO meeting that's for 100,000 or 200,000 employees. You can't do that type of thing with a Teams meeting. It's just way beyond the scale. So, live event fits into that. It's also, live event is a good fit for where you want it to be more of a one-way communication and just have chat for like Q&A, and that's it. So it's, more of that webinar format. It's great for that type of event. And, I would say preferred for that. But any type of event that you have that you want it to be, more collaborative, more communication, you want to literally see each other and, like being in a meeting room at your company, that's where the Teams meetings fit in much better. So, when we did the Teams Day Online, what we found is that we really wanted to make it more of a community that where everybody was able to, share information and ask questions of each other and things. And you don't get that with the live events, but you do get it with the Teams meetings.
Yeah. You mentioned Teams Day Online there. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I know it's Teams Day Online 4, which is on the 17th and 18th of November. But what is the event? What can people expect from it?
Exactly. So, so this is our 4th event, and every event that we've done has grown larger. It's a global community. This time we have, we always have several Microsoft speakers, but on day 1, we have Dan Holm and Ethan Lee that will be talking about building communities and culture using Teams and Yammer integration, and how you can use Yammer to build a online community. So that's that's inside of Teams, and so that's the day 1 keynote, and then day 2. We have Chris McNulty from Microsoft that will be talking about Viva and everything about Microsoft's new employee experience platform and what that brings to the table. And I mentioned earlier kind of like about the maturity model of these platforms. And like when I go back to it, thinking back to that beginning, you got Site Server, you got SharePoint, you've got Teams, and you got Viva. And it's that next evolution in what we've been doing with the technology. So I'm really excited to have Chris in for that day 2 keynote. But beyond that, we have about 55 speakers across 2 days. There's 8 tracks each day. Other speakers are like Joel Olson, Christian Buckley. We have a big handful. Kat speaking. We have a great handful of community speakers that are going to be joining us. So we're excited about it.
Amazing.
Sounds
That's such
great.
a great speaker on there as well, Chris McNulty. Fabulous.
Yeah,
what is it? What is it you're going to be speaking about at the Teams Day, Kat?
I think I'm doing the data loss prevention in Teams session.
Cool.
So make sure you register to watch me speak. I did speak at the last one as well, Teams Day Online 3. You can see, Russ, I'm a big fan of the conference. I tend to join them and then speak at them as well. And yeah, they're always really great. The speakers are great. The sessions are really useful. And especially a time like this to keep up to date with lots of new changes happening to Teams, new features. It's a great time to join the event. So yeah, if there was a little plug, here it is for the Teams Day Online. So how can people get in touch and register if they're looking to join the event?
So the best way to register is teams10x.com. And that's the registration website, has all the information about the event. And so that's the website. That's where to go. And registration's open now, and we'll stay open through the event. So the event's November 17th and 18th.
Fab. I'll put the link in the show notes so our audience they don't have to remember that. They could just click on it. So.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. That'll make it easy.
One thing I'd like to ask, kind of coming off the back of that comment about doing the DLP presentation, because it's a conversation I occasionally have with customers who are a little bit hesitant to make that move to Teams, to SharePoint Online, to the cloud in general. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think when I was doing my little kind of homework, am I right that you've got the CISP qualification, so the CISSP? So you obviously must be familiar with your security stuff, right? And you obviously take it seriously. I'm just wondering, do you have any kind of advice for customers or for users that do have that, what would you say, the nerves about starting to store their files, things in SharePoint Online and Teams? Like, are the security concerns they have about putting that data up into the cloud, into someone else's data center, are they valid concerns?
I don't think they are valid concerns. Or at one point in the time, I would definitely agree that they were valid concerns. But what we've seen is just the evolution of that technology. And, it's actually what's there now is more secure than what a lot of companies have in their environments. And because somebody could come in and take a USB drive and dump all kinds of data on it and walk out with it. If they use the technology, the DLP technology and all, to manage that information, they can control, who's able to access, not just from a security perspective, who's able to access it, but like what they can do with that document once they take it offline. So if they put it down onto a USB drive, they won't be able to open it or anything. So it helps companies a lot with protecting their intellectual property and gives them a lot of those features. It's across the Microsoft 365 platform too. So it's not just SharePoint, it's not just Teams. It's basically all across the platform.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. It's just, I find that as well, that the way that Microsoft, not just Microsoft, but the way that the investment goes with 365 and into Teams and things, the on-prem way of doing things, it's just not getting the same level of investment now, right? So any advancements in that DLP, in that data security, it's all happening in Azure and in 365 first. So that's, I guess, just if I'm thinking out loud, that's one of the other arguments I kind of have of saying, well, maybe your on-prem isn't as secure as you think it is, right? And just because it's the way you've always done it doesn't necessarily make it inherently secure.
Exactly. And I mean, from a security perspective, it's, that's basically what we try and teach our customers and all, is that on-prem is not secure. And, everybody used to have this idea before the internet, or before it was so much use as the internet, that, your network was more secure because nobody else, it's like turning the computer off or unplugging the computer. Nobody else could access it. So, it was inherently more secure. But now it's completely opposite. And I remember, 2013, going to the Microsoft Partners Conference and them basically promoting the cloud and how the updates were going to happen quicker in the cloud than what was going to happen on-prem, and how all the features and investment and everything was going to go to cloud. I'm like, nah, you know what? I'm not sure that's going to happen. Maybe it's going to take longer. Well, it happened quick. They were right on target, and COVID just accelerated all of that. So,
yeah. Yep, because the advantage you've got, you only kind of need to look. I mean, it feels like every week now I go on Twitter and I see some kind of new Exchange on-prem vulnerability, and then you read the details and it says not applicable to Office 365 because Microsoft have already patched it for you. So you get you get that cutting edge of staying on top of the patches without even need to lift a finger.
Exactly. It's from a business perspective, it's hurt a lot of companies that manage service providers, that where they were managing all these big environments. That's all that work is going away for companies that are in the cloud, and that's just good. That trend is going to continue. But I view it as a good thing, because it allows us to focus. Before we were focused on like deploying patches and all for customers. Now we're focused on deploying solutions for customers. We can spend that same amount of time with that customer, understanding their business problems and solving, helping put solutions in place.
Yep. No, it's a good point. It's about focusing the resource on the stuff that gives you the real value, right?
Exactly. So I don't know, when we were generating a lot of revenue from that type of work, I don't know that I would have agreed with Microsoft so easily. But it has allowed us to be more proactive with our customers and focus on things that really make a difference for them. So it's important.
Do you think that have you heard of customers or people having those concerns with Microsoft Viva, the security and compliance concerns? Really, it's not.
No, not really. But I would say it's so early in the game for Viva that we've got a couple good-sized companies, not huge enterprises, but a couple good-sized companies that are running Viva. But mostly, Viva Connections is really what's there. So at this point, that's what, and that there's, that's basically the integration with Teams between SharePoint to bring your SharePoint intranet into Teams. So I don't think companies think about security with that, because it's SharePoint. It's already secure to the way they want it. We're just surfacing it up inside of Teams. But I think as the Viva platform evolves and you get more into some of like the insights capabilities. And I think you're going to see a lot of employees push back against some of the insights, because what do you mean my manager knows how many hours I'm actually productive? And, who determines productive and things like that, I think that's where that's going to come up a lot more. But I don't think we're just getting started with that.
I was on a customer workshop today, and that exact statement came up. So I showed hybrid working, and I just did some click-throughs of Viva to show them what it's all about. And they said, "Oh, our culture is not like that. They're not going to want to be spied on."
Right? Yeah.
I was like, "No, it's the telemetry of using Office 365," and they were like, "People aren't going to like it." That exact thing came up literally today. So I think you're definitely right there.
Yeah. I think that's going to be one of the big areas it's going to be a concern. But I think that can be addressed too. That they're focusing it not on being spyware, but they're focusing it on helping the employee do things like, just shut down at the end of the day. Okay, at 4:30, I'm getting a notification from Insights telling me that it's time to wrap up. And, so instead of spending, like I used to work a lot of times, I mean, it's just 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, and like you guys, you're online now and still going. Well, at some point, it's nice to have that reminder that, like, hey, time to start wrapping your day up so you can go spend time with your family.
Yep. No, that's a good point. You quite often find that a lot of companies, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk when it comes to work-life balance, right? And so if you actually give them the data and you say, here's the number of meetings and things that are still continuing on past your working hours, that might be good to see. And it kind of reminded me when you were talking about how folks might, that you mentioned, Kat, that idea that folk are spying on me. I don't know if you guys caught this, but I think it was earlier this year or late last year, there was a bit of a controversy. Microsoft have this thing called the productivity score.
Right.
And some journalists got a hold of the fact that Microsoft have a tool called the productivity score, and it rates people based on, really what it does is it rates them based on how much are they using Microsoft tools, right? It says how much you're using SharePoint, how much you're using meetings, yada, yada, yada. But the idea that you could score a human being on their productivity, that the optics of it weren't good, right?
Right.
And so that caused a bit of a revolt. And you do wonder, when Viva gets a bit more adoption behind it and people start getting emails telling them about all this kind of stuff, what will they think about it, right? Will they think it's just a bit too creepy? And then part of me also wonders, how accurate is it going to be? Because I've certainly had the kind of the emails that you get from the 365 service, and they're useful in a lot of cases, but then sometimes it'll tell you, oh, you had 6 hours focus time. And I'm like, no, I didn't. No, I did not. So
you had 6 hours on your calendar, but it didn't work out that way. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
No, I think that, I think it's that evolution of technology, and it's the evolution of a modern workplace employee too. Some companies are going to adapt to it and adopt it much quicker than others, just because of where they're at. Just an example, a company like Microsoft basically said, look, we implemented Teams globally across the enterprise within a couple months. Well, okay, one, it's your product, but you've got a very technically savvy group of employees. Even the ones that aren't technicians, they're very adept in using technology. Whereas you have other companies that are like manufacturing companies that give them an iPad or give them a Surface, and they don't know what to do with it because it's something brand new. So, different companies are going to adopt the technology faster, and what their employees think of that technology is going to be driven by their culture and all there. So, I think like one of the things that I like about it that I see every day is we all get the Cortana emails in the morning that basically tell us, okay, these are your open tasks and things that that according to, your emails and stuff, this is what you said you were supposed to do or been working on. How's it going? Well, for me, that's great because, I just trying to remember everything has always been, a challenge. So now just getting that every day, it's like, say, okay, I can prioritize, what things I need to do today. And it's and that's all part of that, the Microsoft 365 platform. And so when people think about things like Viva and they're getting stuff like that, there's pluses to it too. And, it's not like, it's really not spying on you.
Yep, definitely agree. The Cortana emails can be really good because I forget everything.
Right.
I'm the same. I like the Cortana emails. I think Insights is absolutely great. And I actually didn't think the productivity score either was really rating people. I thought it was more to show how people are using the technology. And I used to help with adoption change management for customers. And that was when they introduced that, it's a great tool to measure your success of.
Totally agree. Well, it is. The problem is that's exactly what it does. It's great for folk that are trying to drive that adoption. Forcing, geez, that sounds nasty. But yeah, it's the optics of it, right? From someone that isn't as familiar with it as we are. that, wait a minute, you have a thing called a productivity score and you're tracking what we're all doing. It's simply a perception thing. And I guess it's the responsibility of folks that are driving that team's adoption to be empathetic with the users and not make it look like you're just kind of forcing the tech on them, right? And like you said, Russ, it's going to vary from company to company and kind of almost from industry to industry. You know, some industries are far more eager to adopt the new tech than other ones.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the part of it that really stands out to me is, you know, you go into one company one day and, you know, just the level of knowledge and adoption by the employees, their willingness to adopt new changes and all as they come out is, you know, it's great. I mean, they're very innovative and looking to leverage that technology to solve new business problems. And then you go into another company the very next day, and it's just the culture is completely different. And you know, so how do you drive adoption in those, you know, in those two different companies? The approach to it is completely different, because in one case you're just trying to get them to, you know, hey, open up SharePoint to do this, you know, instead of storing your document on your desktop or putting it in an email, do this with it, you know, very basic things. Whereas in other companies, you know, we've been way beyond that for years. So.
And so I guess this is probably a question for both of you guys then, because you know, you both focus on Teams adoption really, is if you have that customer, that environment that is, you know, like Stone Age, you know, they're still doing things as if, you know, Teams and Office 365 didn't even exist. Where do you even start there? How do you take someone that's, you know, they're only using email, they're only using on-prem file servers? How do you then slowly transform them into the modern way of doing things?
Do you want to go first, Russ, or do you want me to go?
No pressure.
Well, I'll jump in there then. So
sure.
I usually, if we have an organization who's moving to Microsoft 365, they are using everything. It's a total digital transformation for them. One of the things that we think is important is for users to understand the benefits of moving to a new technology. So we focus on use cases and what's in it for me. So we would look at what they're doing, what processes they're doing. They might be doing projects within their email. Then they email everybody, they attach files are lost. And the email, they forget to copy someone in. And essentially, if we were going to do any kind of training or anything like that, we would show them how much time they would save and how it can benefit them moving that conversation into something like Teams. So from the end user perspective, when I kind of do training and things like that, it's about positioning real life work scenarios and the benefits to moving across. And that's where I would really start, is use case scenarios. I'm not sure, Russ, if you do something different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's finding their pain and being able to communicate what's in it for them. And, you know, the similar scenario that I've used as, you know, for years as an example of the problem is you have a project manager that takes they put together a draft of a document or a project plan, and then they send it out through email. Well, everybody, if you're sending it out to 10 people, now you've got 11 copies of that document. Well, then those 10 people make changes to it, and they're probably saving, you know, the original version and the edited version. And then they're sending it back to the poor project manager that needs to take all of those changes and consolidate them into a single document. And guess what happens to it then? Then it goes back to everybody again for approval and review. And, you know, you have to keep, so how much time do you lose in that? And, you know, who has the right document and stuff? So whereas, you know, with now you put something like that in SharePoint and everybody can go in and at runtime be able to edit it and make changes and see what changes that the others are making, so that it, you know, saves everybody all of that time and ultimately saving the company that time, saving them dollars. But, you know, what can they do with that time to help grow the company that they weren't able to do before because they were too busy, you know, consolidating information. So, you know, I think that's a great place to start with companies.
And it's the dreaded reply all on emails. And then you've got like 50 emails in your inbox that are not even relevant really to you. You're just on there as an FYI and you've got 50 notifications coming through. It's just not productive.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the things with Teams that's it's I would say I haven't seen it as much as I would expect, but the whole concept of the modern workplace where Teams basically becomes the place that they start their day. And everybody is so stuck into Outlook that, the first thing they do is they open Outlook in the morning. Getting them out of that and getting them into Teams, that Teams becomes that single looking pane, single pane of glass into everything they do, and where they go for how to get their day started is something that, like, as companies do more and more integrations with their SharePoint environments, like, with Viva connections and pulling those capabilities in, as well as other third-party applications like ADP or Salesforce, and as that Teams environment matures, that where that stuff is becoming surfaced up, and you can put Outlook inside of Teams, yet most companies that I've gone into do not have it or not using it inside of Teams. They still use it as a separate application. So, as that stuff all starts consolidating into Teams, then you're going to stop, people are going to stop spending as much time in Outlook directly. They'll spend that time in Teams, but be able to access all of the email capabilities that they're accustomed to, but they're accessing it from Teams. So that's as companies and individuals continue to evolve and that technology matures within that company, you're going to see more and more going in that direction, but it's going to take time. And I mean, COVID, I mean, what it did in terms of digital transformation of companies that would, because they were forced into it, they didn't have a choice. I mean, was amazing at how fast companies adopted, Teams. I've never seen any product that Microsoft adopted anywhere near as quick. I don't think any of us have. But they were forced into it is what happened. And, going forward, that technology, now that it's there, it'll be as that foundation, but it's going to evolve. And, when they start pulling more of the other information in, that's going to continue to help with the adoption. And, now I think at some point, I don't know when, but I think at some point people are going to say, what's Outlook? And, or they'll think of it as Teams Outlook, Outlook for Teams, something like that. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's a good point. And email is one of those things. It's like, how do you know if it'll ever go away? But you certainly feel that as the new generation of the workforce comes in, they might have used a bit of email through their education, but they're more familiar with the social media. And Teams feels a lot more like the social media, that kind of instant message and response kind of concept than email does. Email feels quite a bit alien to a lot of folks. And understanding the culture of email, that actually takes quite a long time for someone that's never really used it, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned there was that obviously COVID, it really forced a lot of folks' hands, and Teams adoption just went crazy, right? The fastest adopted product at that scale in Microsoft history. For the companies, that a lot of companies really just had to rush it, right? They had no choice, because if they didn't rush it, their business would stop being productive. Now that things are starting to settle, what are some of the best ways that if you've rushed it and you might not have done things quite right and according to best practice, what are some of the best things that folks can start doing now to say, okay, well, here's where we need to head, here's what we need to fix from that rush job? Yeah,
so governance is what they need to get in place so that they have an environment that they can actually manage. I'm all for grassroots adoption initially, but there's a point when you have an amount of users that are on the platform that you need to start putting some policies and procedures in place to allow you to manage the platform better. And so many of the companies that they came in, and I still see this, that they're using Teams as their meeting and chat tool, and that's it. They don't even use any of the collaboration, the actual Teams capabilities, and that is shifting. That now, instead of storing a document somewhere else, they're putting those documents in Teams, and also that's happening over time. But it's an evolution of the technology with that. So I'm sorry, I completely lost the question.
No, it's a good point. So I guess, if Teams has just been thrown in and you're really letting what I'm seeing a lot of the tail wagging the dog, right? Where you have your users who are really, they're using Teams, but there's no top down saying, well, here's the best practices you should be following. Here's how you can really get the most out of Teams. And to your point, there's so little governance about it, right? Throwing all this data into it, they might not be throwing data into it because they might just be using it for chat and voice. But if they're starting to use the SharePoint Online capabilities of it, they've got so much data up there. And with all these regulations now around how long you're allowed to hold data, to your point, I guess the governance is really where you need to start getting a grasp of what you've thrown into your organization.
Yeah, I think it's important, even in terms of, I mean, we went through the model, we went through all of this with SharePoint, okay? And, especially when 2007 hit, in terms of, okay, so now we've got to put some governance in this to manage the growth of it. So things like how does a new team get provisioned? How does a new team get named? What are the policies that are associated with that team? In addition to things like who has access to it, but it also gives you the opportunity to be able to get ahead of the curve with some of this. That if somebody's asking to create a new team, instead of just using the out of the box provisioning where it just spins up the new team, you have a custom process in place that you can say, okay, how many documents are you going to store? What type of documents? What's the size of the documents? And if somebody puts in, most of my documents are videos and they're 4 gig files, and it's like, okay, so that needs to be handled differently than somebody that's putting 1 megabyte Word documents into it. But to have that information up front gives both IT and companies the opportunity to get into manage how it's stored. So maybe something like that everything doesn't go into a single team. Maybe it's actually split across multiple teams. So you have the opportunity to do that, get in front of it with those. You can also apply templates and all as part of that process, that where, somebody's creating a new sales site and you've already got one that's used. So instead of, starting from scratch again, use the existing one as a template, because, like sales regions, you got a top level sales site, but then typically the regions are all the same. So, you can leverage something like that as a template. And so you can put a provisioning and process in place as part of the governance to help you get in front of some of that. But I think that's, where, I just see companies heading with Teams, is that as it starts bringing in more of those other capabilities from either SharePoint platform and all, that they've got to get ahead of it with governance, so that they can manage the environment more.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the templates there. I was going to say that's such a useful tool because you can customize them. And the one that I see being used quite often is the project. So when a user wants to spin up a new project, they can, either request a project type team, which would be a template. It would be provisioned with apps, channels, so it just builds itself essentially. So the user doesn't have to worry about, I need to go and add a tab, and I need to add the right site if I'm already using SharePoint, and so on. So it's definitely quite a useful tool, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's it all depends on how you use them, but I think I would agree that projects is something that, most projects are run the same way. So, you have the same type of things: requirements, design, development, whatever your project methodology is, it should be the same across each of your projects. And, having a template in place to do that allows you to manage not just not just manage teams as an environment, but it allows you to manage the business process so that it's consistent across all of your projects.
Yeah, definitely. So just taking a bit of a turn then away from teams governance, and I'd be interested to know, because you have quite a lot going on in terms of all the things that you are involved with. There's your blog, there's obviously running organizations, conferences, you speak at a lot of conferences as well. Right. So it's quite a huge amount of stuff that you're involved in the community. So it would just be great to know, how's your work-life balance? Do you find, do you struggle with that? Do you find Viva actually helps with that in teams, or it'd be good to know how you manage it all?
So I actually do better managing it today. And I think technology has played a positive role in helping manage it. And, Peter Drucker had a quote, what is it? What gets measured gets managed. So basically, if you have visibility into something, it's easier for you to manage it. And I think that's just really relevant with this and the technology that, people, a lot of times they don't think about how many hours they're actually working and all. But if you have that in front of you and you have visibility into that information, how many hours, people think of their 9 to 5 day. Well, no, I don't know very many people that work 9 to 5 days anymore, especially in the technology industry, because we're always on. Well, I see my phone. My phone says I got like 80% screen time. It's like, that's insane. It's like, so I spend 80% of my life looking at my phone. So, having visibility to that, though, allows me to kind of say, like, you know what, I need to shut this off. And so I think it's relevant from that perspective in terms of just managing.
Yeah. I think there's some tools that are useful. That's where Viva comes in. So you obviously get to see, all right, I've actually had loads of meetings outside of work. And it will also tell you things, how quickly you respond to emails. You've responded to every email within half an hour. You don't need to do that. Email's not for an urgent thing. You would use a Teams chat for something urgent, than an email. So it can wait. So I find that quite useful, and I'm like, oh well, at least I know I'm quick at answering emails, but so exactly. probably not a good thing. And you can turn off on your mobile. You can turn off notifications on Teams as well after dinner time or a certain time. I think that's a handy. I don't do it, but I should. I should do my own advice.
Yeah, but no, I mean, having access to that information allows you to kind of, make decisions based on it in terms of what you're doing. I mean, I don't respond to emails within 5 minutes. I'd be shocked if I seen that. And, that would be something that, would be important, is if I'm spending a lot of time responding to emails, that, to be able to have that visibility to it, because, even in terms of your focus time, how do you get anything done if you're responding to emails that quickly all the time? So being able to shut that off, is important. And I think that's where the technology is really, that's where it's intended. That's the function it's intended to serve, which is to the employee's benefit. So, the employee experience platform, they called it insights. And I think insights is really is a good word for it, because, there's things that you're doing that you don't actually realize it, but as that gets tracked, it allows you to make better decisions. Insights has 2 components too, or more than 2 components, but we've been talking primarily about the personal component of it, but you've got the managers and the leadership components of it too, which allows them to drive, how they make decisions across the business better. So it's not just, if they see their employees are spending a lot of times, in meetings on Saturdays, as an example. Well, why? We didn't even know that was happening, but now that can be surfaced up so that the companies can do things like, well, what's Microsoft got? No meeting Fridays or something like that, to allow people to kind of, get some focus time and shut down before the weekend so that they can actually, enjoy the weekend time.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout. And we spoke on the last episode with Stephen Elrose about that. No meetings Friday afternoon, I think it is. They kind of have that company-wide initiative, and it's a good point because if you're working and you're in quite intensive work and meetings until 6 o'clock on a Friday night, it's still going to take you a wee bit more time to wind down, right? And it goes back to that point about how companies can not always practice what they preach when it comes to work-life balance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything then in terms of talking about work-life balance? What is it that you like to do in your spare time? Do you have any hobbies, or is it primarily Teams and Viva and conferences? And
Yeah. No, so I would say I have two things in my life that control actually the majority of my time. And one is my family. I have 4 children and my wife, and I love to spend time with them. And I actually had the opportunity before I got between my SharePoint days and my Teams days. I took about 2 years off and, spent that time helping my wife raise our family. So it was a good break and a good way to change up between things also. But I spend a lot of my time training for triathlon races, and I love doing the Ironman races and that type of. So I spend a lot of time running and biking and swimming, and if you can always usually find me in one of those 3 places, with it. So, but that's kind of how I get my day started. Is that's what I do first thing in the morning, and then and then I transition into work stuff.
Nice, awesome. I've tried to do the whole exercise thing before work. Didn't work out so well. How do you find it? Is it something that you had to kind of learn to do, or did it come quite naturally to yourself?
So initially, I mean, I would have said at one point that it was a difficult adjustment to make, but I went through a period of time that a few years ago that I started a diet that was basically a juice fast diet, and I lost like 65 pounds on that diet. And and it was
well done.
Yeah. So as part of that, I basically adjusted everything in my life. And I made the decision that, okay, so I'm getting up by 4:30 in the morning, and I'm going to be at the gym at 5, and I'm going to either, swim, run, or bike, and that's when I made that change in terms of the diet. And now I'm basically plant-based vegetarian at this point. That allowed me to adjust my schedule during the day so that, instead of being up till 1 o'clock in the morning, focusing on, writing code or doing something for customers, it's like, okay, so I got to get up. So I got to go to bed at a reasonable time. And, after the kids go down, I'm not too far behind them, essentially.
Do you find that helps with productivity and work? Do you find you have a better work day when you do exercise in the morning?
I absolutely do. I think that's a great question too. Is I personally, I feel so much better even throughout the day. But initially, I've got a lot more energy first thing in the morning, and to take an hour of every morning and spend that time instead of sleeping, spend that time at the gym. When I come out of it, I feel a lot much better. I feel a lot more energy, and I feel better now than I did in the days before doing it, because I was it's like how many bowling balls was I carrying around with that extra weight and all. So there was a point in time where I couldn't run down my street, and as that weight started coming off, it's like, okay, well, I can walk down the street now. Now I can jog down the street. Now I can run down the street. I got to the point where I was running 7-minute miles, and
nice.
That just totally blew me away, So I think a routine schedule that involves getting up early makes you much, much more productive and have a better day, because you sleep better too at night. You're tired.
Right. Yeah, I know that you might, because you're an early riser. One of the famous kind of early risers is Jocko Willink, who also has a podcast, and every day on Instagram he posts a picture of his kind of Casio digital watch at like 4 a.m. and he says that's to hold me accountable, because if I don't post this every single day on Instagram, I'm going to get called out for it. And I thought that was quite a cool little accountability check,
idea.
right? Yeah.
I should start doing that. That's a great idea.
We'll hold you to it.
We'll hold you
podcast will be checking in to make sure.
Yeah,
I do find that. So I have kids, but I've got my dog who's basically my child, and he gets me up in the morning. So I've gone on myself as well, a bit of a weight loss journey this year. I've not lost as much weight. I've lost 27 pounds since January.
Wow,
it's been a slow process, but I've started doing weights, and I have totally agree. I find I take my dog out for a walk, and then I come home and I only do like 20 minutes, half an hour of weights in the morning. But once I've done that, I get shower, get ready, and I sit at my desk, and I feel like, I feel a lot better myself. I've got it done for the day. I feel happier. So I definitely agree with you doing it in the morning, although it's like, oh God, can't be bothered. The feeling is definitely worth it. So the only thing is I've doubled the weights, and I've overestimated because I couldn't even pick them up. So I'll need to slow. I bought them I think arrived today, and I was like, oh God. I could barely pick up one. I might have overestimated. I was like, oh look, I've got muscles now, and then I'm not as strong as I think I am. But so we'll see what happens with that. I might come back Michelin man.
That's great, and that's it. I've just a lot of things that have happened as a result of that are positive. And I think just having that structure and doing that and making yourself go through and do that. I can't like specifically say this happened because of that, but you just feel better throughout the day, and you feel like you have more energy, and it's like I felt like I was falling asleep, like in the afternoon, let alone at night. Now it's like, I'll go out and I can go out, I can run, I can bike, I can swim first thing in the morning, and, really like put a lot of energy into that exercise. But when I come out of it, I actually feel better and have a better day. Then at 8 o'clock at night, I might be ready to go to bed. So instead of staying up all night, but you've got, it's just better time. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah. It's like, it's quality of sleep, quality of time, quality, during the day, and all is just much, much better as a result.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
We were speaking to another guest, Rennie, who was saying that he goes out running. So all we're doing in this podcast is just everybody needs to exercise more and more. Yeah. That seems to be our running theme. Yeah. Get out there and get exercising for a tech podcast.
I think COVID plays a role in that though too, because of, so many people, okay, so we always, in our field, we spent a lot of time behind the screens and everything. But, when COVID hit, it even made it worse, because now you weren't doing any type of traveling and all, but you had a whole new group of people that, didn't spend so much time behind the screens that now are. And, there's a lot more focus on health and wellness as a result of it.
Yep. Totally agree. To switch gears rather rapidly and close out the show with kind of, I'll be honest, what's become a bit of a running gag joke question on the show. Close this off on a positive note, talk about important stuff. We ask every guest if they have seen them. Of the Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 movies, which is your favorite?
Oh, I'll be back. Definitely Terminator 1. That was epic, iconic. It was that was my favorite. I've seen them all, but I think Terminator 1's probably the only one that I've seen multiple times. So where the others were like,
Right.
I went in and see them. Okay, it's a good movie, but just
Yeah.
always go back to Terminator 1.
See, I haven't seen it in so long. I'll need to go back and watch it. I'm in the Terminator 2 camp,
Okay.
but I think I'm outnumbered by far. Terminator 1 always seems to win.
Yeah, judging by Kat's reaction, I think I know.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy about that. I was Terminator 1, and then you and Pete were like, "What?" Everyone said 2, and I went, "No." So every time a guest says Terminator 1, I'm very pleased.
Yeah, I think just I think just Arnold Schwarzenegger and the way he played the role of the Terminator in the first one, with some of the things like that comment, "I'll be back." It's just they stick in everybody's head. They're just unforgettable as part of it. And I'll switch things up. Like you see it with the Rocky series too. There's just certain things that just stick out and are very memorable about that. And I think I'm kind of in the case though too of a sequel could never match the first one with it too, because if you ask me on the Rocky series, like which one was which was my favorite out of that, I would have said 1 in that case also. But that was filmed here in Philly, so that also has.
I was going to say slight bias.
Yeah. So
it's true though. Rocky 1, what a film! What a film! And one of the best endings ever, just because it was. I feel like in a lot of these big Hollywood movies now, it's like then you have to send everyone home happy, right? Whereas in Rocky 1, it was no. This is about a story, and it's about how you don't always have to win, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, great film.
Great underdog story for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So I guess we better close out the show. So what we'll do is we'll put in the links to your LinkedIn, your Twitter, if you use it, so that everyone can find you, and we'll absolutely link to Teams Day Online. But just to close out the show, do you want to remind everyone where they can find you online and how they can sign up for Teams Day?
Sure. So first, thank you both for having me. I was looking forward to this for a long time. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. Teams10x.com is the easiest way to remember it. That's the site for the registration. And, from there, you can basically link into all the information about the schedule and the session, speakers, all the details of the event.
Great stuff. We'll include that in the show notes so that everyone can go away and sign up, and we'll promote it on Twitter and all that stuff.
That's great. Thank you.
Russ, Kat, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you until next time, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.